If you want to get a better understanding of your social media performance and what happens to traffic that you send to your website, you're going to want to make use of UTM tracking links. UTM tracking links are simple bits of information that you add to any URL you publish, whether it's for your link in your bio, on an email newsletter, or part of a social paid advertising campaign. By running these UTM tracking links, when people visit your website, you'll capture a whole host of additional information. And as usual with Google Analytics, you'll then be able to break down on that information who completed a key outcome, who converted to become a lead, who signed up to your email newsletter, and who checked out. If you search for URL builders or UTM tracking link builders, you'll find there's loads of free options available for you. They all pretty much do the same thing. For the purpose of this demo, we'll use Google's own version, which is nice and simple and has a little bit of an explainer as to what information you need to input and why. However, once you've got the grasp of what you need to do, you might want to opt for something like we've done where you put this into an Excel template. So let's dive into the information you need to include. At minimum, you obviously need to pick the URL you're sending the traffic to. So this would typically be your website. Unfortunately, if you're running something like Amazon affiliate sales, you can't use this because you won't be able to review the analytics on Amazon's end. For Google Analytics, in addition to the URL that you're pointing people to, you need to put in two bits of information at minimum. That is the source and the medium. The source is typically going to be where they've come from, such as TikTok, such as Instagram, such as Facebook. The medium is a smaller list of options that you'd usually go for, and it would usually be fairly consistent. So in the case of those platforms I just mentioned, you could use social. However, one nuance to be aware of is if you're running it as a paid advertising campaign, if you use social as the medium, that will get tracked as organic social in Google Analytics. They define, if you want to track paid social separately, that you use something like PPC as the medium. You can input additional information like campaign, content, and term. Campaign's quite useful if you're going to run the same type of campaign across a few different platforms or across a few different mediums. For example, if we had a January offer for a free SEO audit and we wanted to run that across email and across paid social, across LinkedIn, TikTok, and so on, if we used the campaign consistently for all of those, then we'd be able to break down how successful that one campaign has been across all those different channels using Google Analytics. The term and content isn't as important. Content is typically used if you're doing different ad creatives. So if you wanted to compare, for example, with LinkedIn, static image ads versus video ads. The term is typically for the keyword that you're running this for, if you're using a tool like Bing Advertising or Google, although I'll come back to Google in a second, or you could use that for the type of audience you're targeting if you're looking at the different segments. One thing to be mindful of is if you have got auto tagging enabled, Google Ads and Google Analytics will automatically communicate this information between the two different platforms. However, if you're running Google Ads, Google Analytics, and a third-party tracking tool, we typically run Call Tracking and HubSpot for our clients, then you will still want to add the parameters, the UTM tracking parameters on top of the auto tagging. I've built a spoof advert here for a LinkedIn advertising campaign that we are definitely not running, but to give you an example of how it would look, you put in all the information as usual for your ad, and then you just paste the URL with the tracking links. With certain advertising platforms, such as Google Ads and Facebook or Meta, you can use what's called dynamic tracking parameters, where they will automatically insert the information into the URL pattern for you. An example here is a client we're running Facebook ads for to split test two ad creatives. And as you can see, although we have defined the campaign name, because that isn't available as a dynamically inserted parameter, we have got it dynamically inserting the placement, that would be like Facebook feed, Instagram reel, and so on, as well as the actual ad ID in the content field. So it's going to automatically put in a number there for that ad ID. Here you can see how Google explain how the different source and medium will dictate what channel that traffic gets put into. With Google Analytics, you have the option to overwrite the default channel grouping or create your own bespoke channel grouping. However, we find it easier for clients if you just try and stick to the default channel grouping, and that's why I recommend if you're running any paid social, you use the medium of PPC or one of these other options that Google will then understand. So how does this translate to Google Analytics? Well, here's an example for Google My Business traffic, where we're running UTM links to see how much of that traffic visits the website and what actually happens to the users. Do they convert? The answer here you can see is a resounding yes, 47 conversions off 425 new users. However, we don't just have to filter by campaign. As you see, I can click and filter by source, by medium, by default channel grouping. And that's just for the primary column. There is the option to then add a secondary column and add further information. So if you wanted the primary column to be source and the secondary to be medium, that is possible. UTM tracking links aren't exclusive to Google Analytics either. If you're running anything like HubSpot tracking, a call tracking platform like CoolRail, or something like Fathom Analytics, UTM tracking parameters will still be useful. If you've got any questions about UTM tracking, feel free to drop them in the comments. Hopefully you found this useful, but if you want to explore any more around this, let me know.